try to see different phenomena using mathematics. So that is kind of my focus and my passion, try to look at what in physics we call universal patterns. It's kind of funny because if you go and look at my first Reddit, people make fun of me, they say, oh, we will see what happened, another model that will go down, oh, sure, you can never predict the future looking at the past. This is what we do in physics all the time. We look at the past, we try to predict the future. Something extraordinary happens, that is this, okay? And as a physicist, when I did this, I was shocked. So I can kind of predict what the peak is going to be, where the bottom is going to be around that time, and it's going to be close to 200,000. Here, around 200, we will never see anything below 60,000 for Bitcoin.
Wow.
But it's again crazy. 1 million by 2032.
Today's interview is with astrophysicist Giovanni Santostassi. Giovanni has discovered something fascinating about Bitcoin, a law that has accurately tracked the Bitcoin price over the past 15 years. Giovanni has a PhD in astrophysics, and he's an expert in mathematics, gravitational waves, and neuroscience. When Giovanni first learned about Bitcoin, he didn't approach it from a financial perspective, but rather he used his background in astrophysics and mathematics to begin modeling it. What he found was that Bitcoin follows a power law. Power laws are able to predict seemingly unrelated patterns of the universe. They pop up in many areas of life such as biology, language, and economics. And there is a high probability that Bitcoin follows a power law as well, which is spooky. 5 years ago, Giovanni first posted his findings about Bitcoin following a power law on Reddit, and he was met with a lot of backlash. However, at the beginning of 2024, he posted a shocking update. Bitcoin has continued to follow his power law model almost perfectly. In this interview, we break down simply what is a power law, what is Giovanni's background, what the power law model says for where Bitcoin will peak in 2024 and 2025, and when it predicts it will hit $1 million per coin. If you like what Giovanni has to say, be sure to check out both his YouTube and Twitter in the description. But without further ado, let's jump into Bitcoin power laws with Giovanni. So I want to jump in firstly just with your background. Before we get into the power law stuff. So what is your background? You have a PhD in physics, I believe, or astrophysics. Talk a little bit about your background, and then when you first got into Bitcoin or how you were first introduced, that'd be a good start.
Sure. So I'm Italian. I was born in Italy, and then I came to United States to do undergraduate and graduate studies. I was passionate since I was a child about science in general, and in particular astronomy. I was fascinated by the universe and so on. And so I specialize in my PhD studies. So I have a PhD in physics / astrophysics. So I worked in this field of gravitational waves. I don't know if you heard about it. Recently got a lot of attention because we finally discovered them. For a long time, it was a prediction of Einstein, but he did this in early 1900s, and we never saw these gravitational waves. And finally, 100 years later, we were able to do that with these large detectors. We are 4 kilometers wide. And they got the Nobel Prize. The discovery got the Nobel Prize just maybe 5 years ago, if I remember well, something like that. And then, working in this field, I was working for that organization called LIGO. And then I moved to neuroscience. Actually, it's interesting because I moved to different fields of science, and the link with Bitcoin is that I learned how to look at data in different ways, right? In particular, my focus is understanding cycles. So even when I went to neuroscience, I studied the brain in terms of cycles. So I studied what are called the circadian rhythms. So, people are affected by the daily cycles of light and dark, and they affect our physiology and so on. It's like Bitcoin cycles, but every day, right? And also study the brain during sleep, and there are cycles there too, where the brain oscillates between what is called REM and non-REM, different parts of sleep. So, I try to see different phenomena using mathematics. So that is kind of my focus and my passion, try to look at what in physics we call universal patterns. So when you see something in different areas that is kind of similar, right? It behaves in a similar way, but we're talking about very, very different phenomena, we get excited because it means that probably there is some truth there. There is some kind of universal pattern that connects all these different phenomena, right? So this, what is very fascinating in science and in particular in physics, we like to see things in a very universal way. So this is my background. In terms of Bitcoin, I'm also interested in what is called futurism, or I'm actually a transhumanist. So I like the idea is a philosophical movement that thinks that we can use technology to improve the world. We are very optimistic. We believe that, one day we will go to Mars, we will conquer the galaxy, we will probably even defeat aging. And so, I'm going to have a dark beer instead of white. And we can defeat aging, maybe death, we don't die, we live forever, and we expand intelligence. I'm passionate about these topics. And I was subscribed to an email newsletter. And somebody, this was like 2012, right? It's actually my Twitter. I pinned it because I'm so grateful about that article. So there was this article that say, look, transhumanists that want to change the world. We want to do all these crazy things, improve life. But usually, we don't have much money. We are scientists, we are intellectuals, we don't have a lot of money. So why don't we do something to actually maybe get some money, and there is this incredible opportunity called Bitcoin. It's an incredible way of redistributing wealth because this guy having this understanding about the future, he got it. And this was like early 2012 where a lot of people didn't get it, right? Early on like that. And him putting it, I heard about Bitcoin actually in 2010, and I liked it a lot, but I didn't completely understand it. I downloaded the wallet, and you could mine at that time with your desktop, and that was so stupid that I didn't do it. And then this article came about, and I got excited. I thought, I completely understand. I don't understand people that say, oh, I heard about Bitcoin, but I really didn't get it. I got it even the first time. It's just that I didn't jump in completely. I never understood people that say, I don't understand Bitcoin, because to me it was evident from the first day, that they're, okay, I completely get it. And I know what we're trying to do. I know that it's going to be big. Now, 1 million Bitcoin, I don't know if I believed it, but, at that time I thought, yes, it will go to tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And, and it was like $9 at that time when this article came about. And they had like a little picture of Bitcoin. It was one of the earliest price projection, right? We showed this little graph with a straight line between it, say, oh, it looks like exponential. Exponential means, it goes faster and faster, faster up, right? And I look at it and I say, okay, maybe. And I was excited about thinking about Bitcoin in mathematical terms, like I did with the brain, like I did with the stars, And so I started to download the data, and this is when I started to analyze Bitcoin. So basically, 12 years of being familiar with Bitcoin, trying to understand it. So, S2F, Plan B, he is a newcomer in comparison with me. It's just that he got a lot of attention and I didn't. One of the things that I did a mistake was to post on Reddit instead of doing a scientific paper, that I wanted to do, but I was so excited I posted on Reddit, and people were, if you read about it, it's kind of funny because if you go and look at my first Reddit, people make fun of me, they say, oh, we will see what happened, another model that will go down, oh, sure, you can never predict the future looking at the past. This is what we do in physics all the time. We look at the past, we try to predict the future. So, it's silly. But, people didn't believe it. Some people were positive. But, I didn't get a lot of attention or responses. It was not about attention. I wanted to discuss this with people. I wanted to share the knowledge. I wanted other people to criticize, or give me some feedback. Then what happened, this guy, H.C. Berger, he actually took my Reddit article and he popularized it. So it's a little well known through him because he did a good job in popularizing it. And so at the time of S2F, he actually came up with this power law model based on mine. He quotes my Reddit, but everybody associated with him for some reason. They were kind of competing. But again, everybody was so focused on S2F that the power law model didn't get a lot of attention.
One of the things that I think is most fascinating is that you did post it 5 years ago and you were getting all this pushback on the Reddit, and it wasn't everyone was saying, yeah, you can't use the past to predict the future, there's no way to work. And then I think it's getting a lot of attention now because you posted it again this year, and it's essentially, to my knowledge, the exact same model.
In fact, can I show you
5 years.
Can I show you a graph?
Yeah, of course.
So this first graph is the price plotted in what is called a linear graph, right? So basically we have a price. I apologize if I'm using scientific notation here. This is what I'm used to. But basically this is...
It's just a basic Bitcoin chart, price on the left.
And it's a basic Bitcoin chart where you have days, and then price on the y-axis. And you can see, right, it looks like it's going up, but it's very... I don't see any pattern, right? Do you see any pattern? It looks like, okay, it's kind of going up, but and these are, unfortunately, is the chart that they show mostly on TV, when they talk about Bitcoin, because it looks, okay, there is not really anything there, that we should pay attention. It looks going up, but yeah, it went also down, and maybe who knows what it's doing next, right? It doesn't look like a pattern. Now, when you have anything that changes over a lot of orders of magnitude, right? So the price went here when it was like a fraction of a dollar, looks flat, right? And then it starts to go up, and maybe $1, $10, $100. When in science, when you have something that covers so many different orders means going up one factor of 10, we use what is called a log graph. And this is the log graph. So the log graph means now I'm plotting the log, right? So if you take the log of 10 of 10, you get 1, right? If you take the log of 10 of 100, you get 2. So basically it's the exponent, right? 100 is 10 to the 2, 1,000 is 10 to the 3. So the log gives you the exponent, right? It's a formula that allows you to get the exponent out of a number. So 10 to the 4 is 10,000, 100,000, a million, right? So these makes all the numbers, all the scales kind of look the same, right? Because a change in 10 going from like 0 here means 1, so $1 to $10 to $100, they're all scaled up in the same way, in a proportional way. So now you can see more clearly the change that goes from a fraction of a dollar, 10 to the minus 1 means 0.1, right? $0.1. So basically 10 cents. So yeah, Bitcoin was 10 cents at that time, right? In August 2010. And it went up, right? So you can see clear. Now, in a graph like this, and these are asterisks are the housings, right? It looks like there is a pattern, right? There is a clear pattern because it's curving, but it's not that irregular anymore. Yes, there are these bubbles, right, where the price usually happens after the halvings. It goes up very quickly, right, and then it peaks, and then it goes down, and so on. So there is a pattern. But what is this pattern, right? You will look at this. You can use some mathematical tools to what we call in science fitting. So you want maybe there is some kind of a curve, right, some kind of formula that kind of describe the average behavior of Bitcoin. But it's very difficult to see it in this chart if there is such a thing. And then, you can do a trick that we do often in physics. It's not done often in financial analysis because usually assets don't behave like Bitcoin. And so, usually you want like the linear time. The log on the y-axis is pretty common, even in financial analysis, but it's not common to take the log of time. In fact, actually, we had some debunkers that wrote Medium articles, etc. when this model came out, saying, oh, it makes no sense to take the log of time. I can take anything I want. I can take the square of time. I can take the cube. I can take anything I want. Why should not, right? If I do a transformation, what is called a transformation of time, and allows me to see some particular pattern, why not? You have to interpret it. You have to understand what you're doing. Taking the log of time, it means one thing. It means that now, as we are focusing on the change in scale in price, right? We are focusing, we say, I don't care about going from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. I want to see what happens when I go from 10 to the minus 1. So, 10 cents to $1, from $1 to 10. So I'm focusing on these changes in scale. And now I want to focus on the changes in time. So I want to focus on changing from 1 day to 10 days to 100 days to 1,000 days, right? 1,000 days is about years. So we're talking about going from days to weeks to months to years, right? So if I do the same, I focus on these big changes in scale. Again, the critical term here is what we call scale, changing by factors of 10. That is what scale means. Something extraordinary happens. That is this, okay? And as a physicist, when I did this, I was shocked. What do you see here? Forget the oscillation, the blue oscillation for a moment. What do you see? I ask you, because you tell me what happened. What happened from this graph to this graph?
It's going from a curve to pretty much following a straight line. That's what I'm...
Correct, right? It's that simple. This is why this is intuitive. It's not, yes, there is some math, but there is also powerful intuition about this. Now it's linear, and people like straight line, right? I like straight line. Because it's easy to see where our brain doesn't understand what a curve is, right? A formula doesn't come in my mind when I look at a strange curve. But now I recognize this as a straight line. And notice also the incredible thing. The straight line went through 6, 7 orders of magnitude. That means it went from, when Bitcoin was a little baby and it was only 10 cents to $1 to $10, $100, $1,000, 10,000, almost 100,000, right? Because we reached kind of 60,000, but it's close to 100,000. Over all this big, huge span of prices, it behaved in the same way. This is what a straight line means. It was consistent, right? Because a straight line is consistent. The rate of growth of a straight line, it's the same, right? Because now, if you want to go a little bit in the math, what is the equation of a straight line that everybody learns in simple school, right? Even in high school, it's y equal m times x plus some constant, right? Correct?
Yeah.
That m is the slope of a straight line, and it's basically nothing else than the rate of growth, right? Is how fast something, in this case x, grows relatively to y, right? That m. So the m here is, you can calculate it, right? And it's 5.82. This is what I report in the graph. And but it has to be understood correctly in this case, because we're not talking about a straight line in price versus a straight, versus a linear time. We're talking about a straight line between the log of a price versus the log of a time. So basically, a straight line that relates scales. This is telling us that Bitcoin scales up, so it goes up by a factor of 10 every time, in the same way that the price changes in time. So factor of 10s in time. So 1 day, 10 days, 100 days, 1,000 days. So these two things, the change in scale in price and the change in scale in time, are related linearly. That means consistently. So basically, one way of looking at this is that Bitcoin is doing the same thing very consistently from when it was nothing to today. It has behaved in the same consistent way, with the exception of these oscillations, right? After the halving, something crazy happens, everybody gets excited, there is a shock in the supply because what happens during the halving? Basically, how many Bitcoins are produced are reduced by a factor of 2, right? So that necessarily brings the prices up because the miners will lose money if they don't sell their Bitcoin at a higher price. So, they are trying to push the price up. Everybody responds with, getting excited because now the price is going up. Everybody wants to get in. It gets frenzied, right? And then after, it's almost like I say, made a joke. You say like it's, Bitcoin is going to Cancun, and is getting a vacation. But I don't know if you in Australia, you know what, the Americans here go to Cancun.
In Mexico?
In Mexico, it's kind of a vacation place. You get crazy, during a spring break and students get crazy. And then, you get crazy and then you go back. But look what happens, right? This is also a beautiful model because it catches the bottoms. So it looks like Bitcoin really follows this green line. So this green line, these colors, what these colors means, these are deviations from the trend, right? So you can see here in the legend, so we have a minus 40% from the trend, 20% from the trend, and then above, right? So the green is below, the yellow is below, and the pink is above, and the red is above, right? So it's out of these are percent deviations from the trend. So if you look at the minus 40% deviation down, it basically almost perfectly catches the bottom. You see this? You agree?
Yes, it does.
It's right. It's not perfect, but it's
pretty perfect.
Confined.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's confined within this green line during the bear market. So my joke was, well, it looks like if you focus on the bear market, we are going up, up, up. So even during bear market, when people think that nothing is happening, etc., we go up. We go up according to the plan, according to this beautiful model. And then, even here, and then even here, right? And then once in 4 years, Bitcoin goes to Cancun, gets crazy, it has fun with friends, it gets dragged, and then, it has to recover and it goes back, right? It goes back to the trend. And
so a question.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you mentioned you first got into Bitcoin in 2012 and started modeling it. When did you first put this model together where you're comparing the log with the log? And saw the straight line.
Models that I had, I didn't have yet the intuition that we were dealing with a power law. I found power laws. In fact, I can show you. I found power laws in other things here. So this actually is not my article. It's an article that came in 2018, but I did this discovery 4 years earlier. And again, I was stupid because I posted it on Reddit. And the discovery was that there are power laws everywhere in Bitcoin, not just in the price. But, for example, if you look at the beauty of Bitcoin, that we have a blockchain, right?
Yep.
And the blockchain allows us to pull. That is another thing that people need to understand about Bitcoin is this experiment in physics, because we use energy. It's sociology, it's finance. We have all this incredible data about this system used by millions of people. And we get the data from the blockchain, so everything is in the open. That is one of the amazing things that never happened in the history of mankind, to have such a system that is so open. Because, banks don't give you that information. Countries kind of do, but it's also hidden somewhere. It's all in the open. So one of the things I did was to start to get all this information from the blockchain, like here, for example, active users. And so, they are growing up, etc. And again, there is a power law, because notice why this is a power law, because notice the focus on the scales, right? 10 to the 3, 10 to the 4, 10 to the 5. This means we're dealing with a log in the x-axis and a log in the y-axis. But instead of time here, in the x-axis, we have users, right? Because I can plot anything against anything else. And you can see that it's, again, a beautiful straight line. Not perfect, but a very nice straight line between the market cap and the users. So there is a power law. Now, this is not completely unexpected, because there was this theories, this called Metcalfe. I don't know if you heard about his name. He was a scientist that studied networks, right? So networks, the idea of networks is that you have connections, right? You have a node, And at that time, he was studying telephones because we didn't have internet, etc. Telephones was one of the first technological networks that was developed, right? So he wanted to try to put a value. So if I am a telephone company, I want to give a value to my company. Is there something that I can use to give it some kind of value, economical value, or even like usefulness of a network? And he'd say, well, one thing you can do is to look at how many connections there are, right? So if I have n users, right, 1,000 people, 100,000 people, so n is the number of users, how many connections are going to have? Well, basically, everybody, if in a ideal situation, everybody's connected with everybody else, basically an ideal case, how many connections do I have? I have n connections minus me, right? Because I'm not going to connect with myself. So it's n minus 1. So n times n minus 1 is n squared minus n, right? But because n squared is so big in comparison with n, I can kind of throw away n. We often do these simplifications. And so basically say, the value of a network is proportional to n squared. You see how this was derived? Very simple, what we call in physics, back of the envelope, because, sometimes physicists, my girlfriend makes fun of me all the time. I take a random piece of paper, an envelope, and do some calculations there coming in my mind. We call it back of the envelope calculations,
Yes.
And so it's a back of the envelope calculations. You can do it more formally, by doing simulations and things like that. But we basically say n squared, a network should be valued with n squared. And people did some analysis with Facebook, for example, because it was like one of the first network that actually had a value, and you can calculate it or see it in the stock market. But Bitcoin is even more direct because we can actually measure market cap, measure the number of users. Now, these number of users are really easy to calculate because, you will do it through addresses, for example, wallets. It's a proxy. It's an approximation. But you can see there is a very nice relationship. So you will expect, right, because it's n squared, basically what happens is here another piece of math, but it's relatively simple, and people can look online, right? Why the power of this relationship n squared is actually the slope, right? It's simple to show mathematically, but basically, if you have anything like a relationship between market cap and active user, where that looks like number of users to the square, if you do a log plot of this relationship, the slope will be exactly 2. It will be the power, right? So the slope is the power. It's what relates one quantity to the other. And so you will expect the slope of this curve to be 2. But in my Reddit post, I showed when you measure it, actually was 1.5, something like that. And that is interesting because it means that this theoretical calculation of Metcalfe was too optimistic. In fact, it was kind of a ideal case where everybody else was connecting with everybody else. So it makes kind of sense that this number, the real number, is close to 2, 1.5, but not exactly 2, right? And in fact, now if you measure it, this paper, this was published by a famous physicist that actually he studies markets. He wrote a book that is called Why the Stock Market Crashes. And it was like a very popular book. I can send you a link. It's made for the public, but he actually has models of what happened to stock markets, why they crash. And he wrote this paper studying Bitcoin, and they claim that they were the first one discovering this thing, but I did it 4 years before they did. But they publish in
So what year did you first start doing these power laws and comparing the exponentials of active users versus the market cap, and then the
my first post was around 2013.
Oh, okay. So you were doing it very early, and then
very early.
Okay, and the first Reddit one you did of your actual power law model, that was in 2019. So
So the breakthrough was. This was interesting because this was the first time that I understood there were power laws in Bitcoin. But if you want to go from time, because what you care is really time, right? Because you want to know 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you would need to do two steps. You will need to have an idea of how active users change over time, and then relate that to the price through these new two power laws. So you will have to do two steps. And in fact, in my post on Reddit, my first post, I did that. I had like a model of how I use what is called a logistic curve, which is basically, the S-shape curve for technology adoption.
Yeah,
I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
Many technology follow these S shapes. They say, the user will grow like that. So I fit it, the users to that curve, and then from that I derive a price. But I was getting, some crazy results, like Bitcoin will be millions of dollars within, 2020 or something like that. And then eventually what happened, I simply did this. So what I should have done first, I plotted the price, the log of the price versus the log of the time. And now the power law was there, directly. I didn't need to do an intermediate step. That is actually much better because time is really what we care. We don't have a good understanding of how wallets or addresses relate to real users, because it's an indirect comparison. Time is really the master, because if you understand how things evolve in time, then you can project it in the future, right? You have an equation and say, okay, this is what will happen in 5 years. This is what will happen in 10 years. So this understanding came in 2014. This is when I posted this post on Reddit. I called it 10 years of power law. People were making fun of me. Some people appreciated it. Some people didn't even understand what I'm talking about. The biggest block is understanding this log of time, because look how funny it looks like, right? So for example, see how it bunches up here, it's something that people are not used to see. And some of our critics, actually serious critics, like people with economy PhD, one guy say, if this doesn't make any sense, he wrote this Medium article criticizing this model, say, it doesn't make any sense. It means you're basically saying that time is accelerating. Not at all. We don't have any control of what time does. We are simply showing that it takes longer and longer time for Bitcoin to go up by a factor of 10.
Yeah, which makes sense because
makes sense.
Right? Yeah, as it gets bigger to go from, it's like the law of large numbers. As an asset class gets bigger and bigger, it needs more time to do that order of magnitude up again. So to me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
don't make me move my Italian hands.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? It makes sense.
It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me.
It's perfectly intuitive. What is not intuitive, that it does it so, I don't want to say almost explicative, but almost perfectly, right? And in a very, very incredible, regular fashion that is unexpected.
So to break it down even more simple, a power law is just comparing two different exponentials, and then once you do it, you see this nice straight line, and they pop up everywhere and
exactly. So these are these slides, right?
Yeah,
showing these slides. They made a joke, that meme. Wait, when it's all about power laws, it always has been, right?
And it's for seemingly completely complex, unrelated things, and you find these power laws, and so you've discovered this pattern, but there's no real good explanation because there's so many variables that go into it, or is it because it's a network and something to do with the halving, or I think you mentioned debt goes into it? Like, what would be your explanation as to why it does follow this beautiful straight pattern?
Okay, so first of all, you're right? So for example, in these slides, right, you can see all these regularities everywhere, right? In living organism, the changing body mass versus the metabolic rate. This is in languages. You see, these are all different languages, dozens of languages, similar pattern, right? So in this case, we are looking at how many times a word appears, right? And here, basically the log rank that means, if we organize them in terms of how many times we appeared, so you can see it's not random, right? You will expect that it's completely random, but it's not. It follows a very precise power law. Same thing with the growth of cities. For example, this graph looking at different nations, every line here represents a city. So how many of it's kind of similar here. They are kind of organized in terms of rank. many of these cities you have of this size and their size. So it's not random. It's a very precise pattern. Now, with the planets, so this was one of the first power laws that was ever discovered. So, this is also very interesting historically. This was Kepler. He went almost crazy, because he thought that there was some kind of pattern in the universe that related the distance of the planets with how long it takes to go around. And, at the time we were transitioning from thinking the Earth was at the center of the solar system to actually the sun. And they were still looking for some kind of pattern and some kind of regularity, right? Because God did it. And he was trying all kind of crazy mystical type of mathematics. And at the same time, people were discovering the logs. He actually contributed in understanding the logs themselves. And so one day he decided, okay, I'm going to plot the log of the distance of a planet. This is what the semi-major axis means, because, it's really not a circle, it's an ellipse. So the size of ellipse versus the size of how long it takes for the planet to go around the sun. And again, notice the emphasis on the size, right? So 1, 10, 100. So that is the theme, right? So when you focus on the size, you have these log charts. And look at this. Beautiful, amazing straight line. Now,
and that's interesting that they did the time in log as well, and that's the biggest criticism of the model.
Exactly.
But the original one they also do it with time. So that's interesting. That's very interesting.
It made me laugh because as a physicist, that is not strange for us, but evidently it was strange for him. It is strange from an economic point of view because nobody else does what Bitcoin does in terms of assets. But the thing here is that is almost perfect for the planets because planets work with relatively simple laws, right? While with an organism, you see how with organism is more kind of a little bit more random. It doesn't perfectly follow a straight line. It's kind of following that straight line, but not perfect. There is some randomness there. With cities, the randomness is even bigger and whatever. With the assets, it's even bigger, because we are more unpredictable. But still, there is a general path, right? So this is to answer your question. Yes, with a planet, we know because see, this is what helped Newton. Newton took actually these because that is another kind of story, right? I don't know what is going on behind Bitcoin behavior. Kepler had no clue. He didn't know. He knew that something weird was going on, right? This is why he was a good scientist. This cannot happen by chance. But he didn't understand it. He didn't know about gravity yet, right? He didn't discover the laws of gravity yet. And then Newton comes about and said, guys, this crazy pattern that Kepler found, that dude, I know what is going on there. And he wrote, 500 pages book to explain it, right? And the exclamation mark embedded it. And I derived, from this principle. And he had the basic principle, right? He said, if you push an object, you're going to get resistance, right? Mass equal ma. The larger the object, bigger is more difficult is to push it. That nobody thought about that before. I don't know why. We know that, but he wrote a nice formula for it. And that formula combined with this crazy law of gravity that he came about, when you combine them together, hold and behold, you get this beautiful pattern, So that was this is why it's so famous, right? He was like a genius, but with planets, it's not easy. I don't know how he did it because with the amount of the time, he had to invent calculus, right? He came up with calculus to explain this stuff. In fact, actually, his original book, sorry if I talk about physics, but...
No, you're okay. You're okay.
First love, he actually, because everybody was ignorant and didn't know about calculus because it was not invented yet, he had to use the crazy mathematics of the time. It was all about angles, geometry. So this is why it took 500 pages. If you use calculus, just calculus, it would have been, 20 pages, So, but he had to explain it with the old mathematics of the time because otherwise nobody could follow. And it took much longer, but he still did it. And how he did it, I don't know. That guy was like, oh my God, you have people like that once every few centuries. But so to answer your question, is there a law that governs that? Probably not a single law. What is beautiful is that many different things come together they work together, they interact together like people, right? We call it agents. We have thousands and thousands, if not millions of agents, all working together, all interacting, and we think we have free will and we can do whatever we want, but in the end, not, because we are governed by the laws of physics and math and finite supply and all kinds of things like that. And like in the cities, right? You will think that cities behave randomly, but they don't. Organisms, very different organisms. Organisms are also networks, right? Because we have blood vessels, we have cells communicating with each other, we have nutrients going from one part to another. It's basically like we are big cities, right? We are like cities ourselves. We are many different cells working together for one single goal. And so also we behave in a very organized fashion, So same thing, language, probably same thing. Like language is also connections and meaning, so it tends to organize in a very precise fashion. Same thing with Bitcoin. Now, why other assets don't do that? Because they are really not perfect networks. They are networks, but not as efficient, not as well connected. And also probably there is something about Bitcoin having a cap, right? That somehow forces it to behave in a certain way, and that that the constraint makes it more regular. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would love to have a Newton. I don't know. I don't have the mental power to come up with a very precise model. At least I don't know. I didn't do it yet, but it would be nice if a group of people would come together and come up with a theory of what is going on beyond Bitcoin to make it behave in this very fashion.
But it could be. It could be something to do with the Metcalfe law and how a network gets exponentially more valuable as more people join the network because the connections are an exponential. But it could be a whole range and multitude of different things.
Right. So Metcalfe is part of the picture because I don't know if I have it here, but I can show you some graphs where I redid this thing where I look at the users right now. I try to extrapolate, and you don't get as beautiful as a prediction like this.
Yeah.
So there is other stuff that is not completely explained by number of transactions, number of addresses.
Yeah.
But the beauty of doing it with time, that in the end, time is the master, right? Because this is what we want to understand is how the price progresses in time. So some people criticize that. They say, well, but time doesn't explain anything. No, time doesn't explain everything, right? So you can do the other way around, say, given that it behaves in this way in time, then what are the causes, right? So you can go back and whatever mechanism you have, it needs to explain this thing, is the other way around. Because otherwise you're imposing a model and you're trying to say this is how it's going to behave, and then it doesn't, but it does this, so it needs to be explained. And so there are probably many things coming together, like in physiology, more than one force come together, and it's very complex, and then, but the beautiful thing, right, that is the amazing thing, that notwithstanding all these very different mechanisms that come together to influence the price of Bitcoin, in the end, it still behaves in a very, very way.
Just so fascinating. It's fascinating. It is.
And it's useful, why? Because then you can do first of all, look at this, this is another way to showing, and these are the differences, right, between the prediction and so the general trend and the real price. So you see, there are these variations, right? When there are these bubbles, the price goes up relatively to the trend, when it goes down. Notice how the bottoms, though, much more regular, right?
Yeah.
Than these crazy peaks. Also, there are other things that you can learn. Now, like, for example, see how there is like a decay.
True.
Peaks, right?
So that theory that there's going to be diminishing returns looks like that is a true factor.
It's not a theory, is a real fact. Now, it's the reason why people call it a theory is because, differently from the general trend where we have like thousands of data points now, the peak themselves are only 4, right? But actually, we can exclude this one because this was not due to the halving. It was due to something else. The ones due to the halvings are these 3. And so having only 3 data points and you want to do some statistical claim about that is not significant, right? Because it could be that only by chance we see this pattern, right? And then the 4th one goes back to be higher than anybody. So it's only 3, so we have to be careful. But the general pattern is not only 3, it's thousands of points. So we are pretty sure about the statistics of this general behavior, right?
Yeah.
And so once you establish this trend, so really there are almost like 2 different signals. So there is one general pattern, and then on top of the pattern, there are these bubbles, right? There are these, and they are also predictable because they seem to happen every 4 years. So this is what I did in this model. So in this model, I combine everything. I say, okay, so there is a general trend. I can extrapolate the trend to the future, but here I go all the way to 2033. And the reason I stop there is because I would like to know when Bitcoin reaches $1 million, right? $1 million. You know?
Yes, right.
So this is when it is reached there. I know my memes. I know if I look old, but I know my memes. I like memes. See, that is the beauty of this model, because now you have an equation. It's just an equation of time. Right? Basically, the equation, what is the equation? So if we go back to the slide, it's here. It's basically some constant, but is a small number, 10 to the minus 17. And then time to the 5.82. It's that simple. The price goes up as the time, let's round it to 6, right? To the time to the 6. So, if you double the time, you take the power of 6, whatever that is, because I don't know how to do it in my head. And if you want, I can use a calculator. So 2 times to the 6, 3 times to the 6, 4 times to the 6. This is how the price goes up with the power of 6, right? So you double the time, take the power of 6. Maybe somebody can calculate it very quickly, for us. And then this is how the price goes up, right? It's the simplest possible formula. Time to some kind of power, right? It's exactly 5.82, but we can round it to 6, to make it simpler. And so you can take that equation, extrapolate it to time, because now in that t, you can put any time you like. You can put any time in the future. By the way, all the times, it is also very cool, are expressed in terms of days from the Genesis block. You don't get this beautiful curve. There is another confirmation that we are into something big, because if I use another time, another starting time, it doesn't work this well. The curve doesn't look this beautiful. So it makes sense, because what was the value of Bitcoin at the Genesis block when it was created?
Nothing.
So t to the 0 to the something, right? It's 0. So it was 0, right?
Yeah.
It was exactly 0. And so this is why it makes sense. So all the prices are relatively to when it was created. So you take the days. In fact, you can ask ChatGPT, take the formula that I just gave you, ask ChatGPT, calculate these in 2023, 24, 25, and it will give you, right? So it calculates how many days from the Genesis block, it puts it in that formula, and this is what I did here, right? So I extrapolated the value. Now, this is a log linear, so log on the y-axis, linear on the x-axis, right? Because it's more natural to us to see it in this way. Once we realize it's a power law, I can go back to this graph, and it looks curved, but you can see, right? Now I can extrapolate it. I can add these bubbles, right? Because what I did to add the bubble was to add some kind of sine function, right? Because it's periodic every 4 years. So I kind of replicate it. So first of all, look how beautifully it replicates the past, right? Now that we have the bubbles on top of it, I can actually track almost perfectly, right? I mean, it's a model, right? It's still a simplification. I cannot really predict perfectly everything, but it does a very damn good job predict is something that is supposed to be completely random, right? Here, the stars again represent the halvings, and then I can continue to extrapolate. Now, what the other modification I did, I say, well, given that the model predicts so well the bottoms, make sure to go down about 50%, 40%, right? Because we say the bubbles happen 40% from the deviation. So I say, okay, when we are in a better market, we are always 40%, very simple formula, Make sure we are 40%. So you see how perfectly replicates the bottom.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then
so
the bubbles,
sorry.
And I actually also introduce a decay. So I look, even if I say we cannot really count on this decay of the peaks, I made it part of the model. So this is why you see how these bumps became smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Because I kind of say, okay, if the bubbles go down by this factor, as we observe it, what will be the next bubble, the next bubble, the next bubble, And so I can kind of predict what the peak is going to be, where the bottom is going to be. So, let's come back in 2 years from now, 4 years from now, let's have a regular meeting.
Yeah, see if it's continued to fall.
Because
it's
crazy, right? That we can predict.
It is crazy. And for right now, it's currently saying we're still in that 20% band underneath the trend line. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we are still so the one way of thinking about this chart is also, are we undervalued relatively to what we can call fair value, right?
Yeah.
Because the middle line here represents what we can call the fair value, the average value of Bitcoin. What Bitcoin should be valued right now. So that number right now, by the way, so if you go to my Twitter, every day I post like an update and I give, okay, today the models say Bitcoin should be valued $60,000. In fact, right now it's valued around $60,000 to the model. So we are basically below that by about 25, 26%. So it means basically we are buying Bitcoin at a discount.
Yeah.
So this is one way of thinking. We're getting a discount from the fair value of Bitcoin of about 25%. So it's still a crazy deal, right? It's a very good deal. So it's basically a way of saying, if you do DCA, is a good time to do DCA right now? Maybe you should go 100%, right? So if you're maybe 20, 30%, 40% deviation from the trend, go full with your DCA. Now, if you come closer to that line, maybe you want still to buy a little bit, but maybe wait, save some of your money for when we go back to the green line, right? To the green band. And then as we start to go towards the pink and then the red bands,
that's when you start taking
style of investing, right?
Yeah.
So if you are one of these crazy hodlers that say, I will never sell my Bitcoin until, who knows what, until I am 300 years old, if hedging, or whatever, then, I don't know, you buy more when it's green and you don't buy when it's red, right? So you can use it in that way. You just wait until it goes back to green and then you buy more. If you are somebody that wants to maybe play these oscillations, you could say, okay, I'm going to maybe start to sell, maybe not all of them, but maybe 50% of my Bitcoins. I do what is called rebalancing, right? So I start to sell some of my Bitcoin because they are overvalued in this case, and they are more and more overvalued. And then I will use the cash that I freed to buy more Bitcoin.
So have you used this in the past, this model to buy in and out and trade Bitcoin, and has it been successful?
I called bottoms, like in particular recently.
Yeah.
In 2017, I had this model in front of my eyes, and I didn't want to believe it. So I need to be honest, because I look like a wizard. Yeah, of course I use.
Yeah.
I'm super rich. It's not my style. I want to be completely honest.
Yep.
I didn't believe it myself. In fact, I told myself a lie. And when we were here, and my account was going crazy, I say, oh, this is different. We broke the trend. I still didn't get the significance of these cycles. When we broke the trend, our institutions are coming. We are all going to the moon. We are all going to be rich, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I was stupid. Experience, like you learn.
Yes,
you learn. It was still kind of early for me to completely understand the cycles and everything.
So you just held everything?
No, I held everything.
Held everything.
In fact,
Okay.
I was exposed to a lot of halts. I had a lot of adventures in crypto world. I got hacked for 35 Bitcoin.
Oh my God.
The Metcalfe, probably you don't remember Metcalfe. There was this crazy exchange called Metcalfe in England, and one, a crazy Doge promoter at that time. He was actually a famous trickster that tricked the entire community, and he bought this exchange, and then he ran away with money. It was like an early FX kind of deal. But this guy really it's not that he was incompetent, he was a thief. He actually ran away with the Bitcoin, and they lost 35 Bitcoin. And then, during this time, I was heavily in alts, but I know, people, you can make fun of me. But my alts were going up faster than my Bitcoin. So I was all excited, and I should have sold everything and stayed in Bitcoin, or maybe even in cash and buy. But, the model said, perfectly, you're crazy, we are in above the red territory, go out. But I didn't believe it. I thought this time is different. It's never different.
Everyone goes. It happens to everyone. Everyone goes through that.
Yeah. Now we have a tool, right? Now we have a tool. We have a tool, and we should use it, right? So please, guys, use the tool. This is why I'm doing this. I'm not doing it for likes on Twitter. Even if I like you to like me, but I do it because I think it's useful. People should know about this, and believe me, very few people still know it. Because. The non-Bitcoiners have no clue, absolutely no clue. They think it's still random stuff. They look at that first chart I show where there is no pattern, But look at this. Though it's not crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. Now, you said you didn't believe it back then. What is your conviction in it that it's following a power law and that it will follow this model into the future? Are you almost at 100%? I know all models are
99.99%. We can, we can, even the planets, we cannot be sure, right? Because maybe we don't understand something about gravity. Maybe some star comes by the solar system, pushes the planet away. We don't know 100% nothing in science, right? But with the markets, even less, right? Because it's still human beings, and even if they are regular, etc. But see, the beauty. And this is one of the main message I want to give everybody, okay? So listen up. The beauty of recognizing this as a power law, if the theory is correct, right, and it seems to be correct, is that it is something intrinsic to the system. The system will not change. No ETFs, no China bans, no Joe Biden saying we cannot mine or, whatever. No humans can change this thing now. And in particular, now more than in the past, because as the system becomes bigger, it's like, pushing an elephant or a whale. It's much more difficult to push a whale than a little mouse. As this system becomes bigger and bigger, it's more difficult to change. And it's going to do its own thing. It's going to stick to its own pattern, its own intrinsic pattern. So it's not just another model. This is what I'm trying to, because, after all, if some little math, it's very simple to do these regression models. I'm not a genius to do anything like that. I think I had some good intuition to focus on the power law, but the genius, and it's not just my genius, it's the genius of anybody that recognize this as an intuition, a moment of intuition, that we are dealing with something very fundamental about the nature of Bitcoin. And this gives you a perspective on everything. It becomes a philosophy. Bitcoin will continue to do what Bitcoin does. And so that this means that it's going to be predictable, that it's not going to change, we can count on it. Now, I'm going to sell all my clothes, all my belongings, and put it in Bitcoin. Even if I wanted, I could not, because I need to sleep on a bed. I could try to sleep on the floor and sell all my chairs, like say. I have still one chair in the house. I can still sell that one. But
are you essentially all in on Bitcoin? If you have 99.99% conviction that it will follow this model, in terms of investing, are you like, it's Bitcoin and I'm 100% sure?
there are people listening that should not listen, maybe.
Yeah.
Right, like I don't want to say complete all the things about my own personal life.
But it's a significant.
Here's what I will say. In fact, look, I'm telling you something more. I'm actually working on a document. I'm writing this document like kind of a report that I want to start to give to companies, almost like it's going to be a business model for me. I want to be a consultant, make this very nice report with all these charts, explaining the story, and then almost going door to door to small business. I'm focused more on small business and medium business because I want them to be successful and tell them, look, I have this story, but 90% of them will kick me out of the store and tell me, you're a crazy guy, go away. Some people will listen, and I will tell them, do what Michael Saylor is doing, borrow money, and then pay back your debt, because this thing basically predicts that for next 10, 15 years, we are going to do at least 40% a year.
Yeah.
It's more than any loan, more than any asset. So, even if you have a 10% loan, right, a year, you pay back your loan and you make money on top of that. And if you follow the cycles, so I have actually a chart, and if you give me a second, I can pull it up. Let's see if I can find it. But, I can send it to you. But I have this chart where I predict how much money you're going to make if you pay every month your loan. Right? If you let's say you take $100,000 loan and then pay 10%, in interest, I did an amortization. You're going to make, if it depends on how aggressive you are, you want to get in and out of these cycles, you want to short when you go back. If you short, and so, that is a little bit more, taking more risk. But if you, just as a kind of a best case scenario, right, we have almost 320 times return in 10 years from now. No percent. 10.
Crazy.
120. So $100,000 calculated with $100,000 loan became, after you pay all your debts, becomes $16 million. Something like that.
Ridiculous. For the people
that is so secure and safe, because, after the ETFs, etc., okay, maybe it doesn't do this, but it's still not going to zero.
Yeah.
Not going.
I think we're beyond that point for sure. For the people, everyone is always interested in price predictions, and perhaps this is the first time they're seeing the model, and that all want me to ask you, in the 2024-2025 bull run, it looks like it peaks out in the middle of 2025. And what is that? Yep. What is that price range that you would estimate Powell suggests that it will get to?
Yeah, so usually the peaks are about the end of the year, and so this is going to be the end of the middle or end of 2025. So
yep.
Start of 2026. So it's not perfect, right? So you see it oscillates a little bit, where exactly the peak is. But around that time, and it's going to be close to 200,000.
Awesome.
And again, this assuming that there is this decay. Now, it's possible that there is not a decay, and so it's going to up much more. But, guys, I'd rather hope for 200,000 and base it on some kind of math, and then see 500. And that will be the first one to say, okay, great, right? Because I don't think the model will be broken. It will be simply, this component will not be right? That we don't have a decay here. But I still think it will go back to exactly doing what it does during the bear market. That is good news, because you can see even during the bear market, we are simply going up, right? So, that bottom should be around 16,000, something like that.
Okay,
so
interesting.
After the peak here around 200, we will never see anything below 60,000 for Bitcoin.
Wow.
But it's crazy.
And
so then, 1 million by 2032, something like that.
Awesome. And then you said you were in altcoins before. Have you tried to find a Powell or model other things like Ethereum, Solana, and you can't find it? It doesn't show up?
Yeah,
just
the first
Bitcoin?
thing, you see, the pattern starts to be obvious when you start to change over many, many orders of magnitude. Then, so, maybe Ethereum did that because it went from few cents to a few thousands, but even there, you see what happened, it will be only this section of the, if you did something similar with Ethereum, it will be only this section, right?
Yeah.
You don't start to see the real pattern until you have a couple of other orders of magnitude and no asset has done that. But, you can still try, and then they try, and it doesn't really look like there is a nice power law like with Bitcoin.
That's interesting that it's just Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, that we are dealing with something that is not
something different. Yeah, okay, interesting.
Different, But it's kind of like a prediction, because there were people like Al Finning, that saying the same thing. They say, don't worry about, the code being open source, because they kind of predicted there'll be a lot of people replicating, what Bitcoin did, the code, etc. Say they would be self-defeating, because if you don't believe a narrative of Bitcoin, you say, okay, this coin is going to be good as Bitcoin, then this coin is going to be defeated by the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yeah.
So every time you make a new coin, the value of that coin is going to be less than the previous one, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So the only really that has that clout and that power and that standing value is Bitcoin, because it was the first one. So it makes sense, and the data kind of
backs it up a bit. Yeah. Just one more thing. Can we go back to the power laws chart, the fifth one, that shows the different, this, number 5, one more forward. So of the cities and...
Oh, yeah, these ones. Yes.
Yes, this one. Something interesting. I'm not sure. I know you're familiar with Michael Saylor, but if you watched a bunch of his work, sometimes he refers to Bitcoin as a shining city in cyberspace, and that you can buy digital plots of land. I thought it was fascinating that you can... To my knowledge, you can estimate the GDP of a city based on the population size, and that I think maybe Michael Saylor has discovered something, or he might be might have somehow...
I don't know. I would like to talk with him. He's big guy, so, maybe he's ignoring me because, I kind of, he's very busy, I'm sure. And then I also don't know what is his philosophy about models, because he also says all your models will be broken. And
yeah.
I don't know, is not what is happening here with Bitcoin. Actually, he been he has a mathematics background.
He went to MIT and
that's aerospace.
Yeah, aerospace. Yes.
Oh yeah, amazing. So I respect him a lot, and I think when he talks about Bitcoin, he talks like a physicist.
He does.
He talks about conservations. He talks about all these things. So you should be the first one agreeing that this is amazing if this is true,
Well, I'm actually
important.
I'm interviewing him in 2 weeks, and I'm gonna I'll ask him about all of this. I'll see if he's looked into it, and I'll show him the model.
But it would be very interesting, and I want to do more. I want to start to do some calculation based on comparing it with cities, because we have these studies where they actually did that, where they came up with all these patterns. I had a Twitter where I show all these beautiful power laws that people are finding, like, for example, the GDP, the number of patents, unfortunately, even crime. So one could calculate how many scammers there are around Bitcoin, because with the good things, you also get the bad things. The good things are going to win, but, there are also bad things coming up with scaling up. And all of them, all these things, interactions between people, all kind of things were power laws. And it's interesting. Like you can see here, it doesn't matter if you are so every time. The beauty also these power laws that is almost like a fingerprint. You see this n value.
Yeah.
The specific value, it tells us something about the process. Like, for example, with organism, if I remember well, is 3/4. It's something very specific that has something to do with what is going on with the different processes that drive this. Like the power law from the planets tell us exactly like gravity works. So it's almost like a fingerprint is a characteristic number for that system. So the fact that it is 5.8, and maybe 5.8 is an approximation, so the real number maybe 6. It's like a fingerprint for Bitcoin. It's its characteristic number, and it tells us something about the process, And maybe we can try to do something, making it more related to how city looks like. And then it will come up, Bitcoin is like a city.
Yeah.
It's like a city of this size, right?
Yeah.
And it grows, right? So now it's like New York. Now it's like Los Angeles.
Yep.
Now, and it will be a day when it's like more like a country. And now maybe, something bigger than that. So there are all kind of, once you start to see things in this way, you are leaving the modeling, right? This is why S2F really, it seemed to add a mechanism, right? Flow, these things. First of all, let me say this. Not really, because he derived that relationship using the time anyway. So he basically kind of rediscovered this power law. It's just that in addition to that, he says, the price will jump up by a factor of 10 every halving. It's not happening. And I will be the first one liking that, because we will be ultra rich quickly. It's not really, we have to accept the data for what it is. It's not happening. But this is more beautiful, in my opinion, because it is a Bitcoin. First of all, from a practical point of view, is growing slowly, but slowly. Well, power of 6, what are you talking about? It's still very fast, right? It's not just, see, S2F means exponential, because if you double something or make it 10 times something at a fixed rate, every 4 years, it's easy to show mathematically you will get an exponential. And exponential means explosive growth. And it's not what is happening with Bitcoin. It's fast growth, but it's a power law growth. It is beautiful, because then there are all these consequences about the robustness of a system, about a system, almost like it has homeostasis, right? Like an organism. You excite it, you push it away from equilibrium, it wants to go back. You push it away, it wants to go back. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then, the fact that it is universal, it looks like planets, it looks like organisms, it looks like cities. It's philosophically, it becomes like a point, it's a scientific point. It's beautiful, so.
It is beautiful.
Saylor was right. Like maybe his intuition, maybe he was making like a more general metaphor, but it's actually really true in a sense. Right? Mathematically, it grows like a city, it becomes like a city. So it's very interesting.
Awesome. Giovanni, I think we might leave it there for the intro, but this was a fascinating introduction into power laws. I feel like I understand it. The beauty of Bitcoin is it has taught me so much about economics, monetary theory, and now mathematics. And the more I learn, and I've been in it for years and years now, the more blown away I am by this thing.
Same.
I want to ask you a kind of weirder question, but are you religious at all? Like these power laws blow my mind, and the patterns that they come up, it's like it's so bizarre that these complex things come together, and that math explains it.
An atheist. So
an atheist, okay.
Yeah, but I do believe that there are patterns in nature, right?
Yeah.
From the complexity of the universe, etc. I'm actually writing a book about that entire idea, right? And my book is going to be, I'm writing a book on Bitcoin, first of all, the physics of Bitcoin. But also I'm writing a general book about, it's called The Purposeful Universe, Finding Meaning in a Meaningless Universe. Because there is meaning in the universe and we give it. It's us. But at the same time, there are all these patterns that, weirdly enough, and I know it sounds completely crazy, but I will leave it there and then read my book to understand why. They come from nothing. Nothing drives everything else. Nothing is full of symmetry, and these symmetries give rise to the complexity of the universe. I know it sounds crazy and weird, but it's actually what is going on. There is ton of evidence that is exactly like that, right? That nothing is, and it's interesting because this is what the Greeks say, that the universe. So anyway,
it's fascinating. We'll have to read your book once it comes out. I'll include a link to your Twitter and your YouTube in the description, and to head over and we'll follow it. And I think we should do a follow-up maybe a few months after the halving and just see how it's tracking along, and then another follow-up and just keep tracking it, because this model is fascinating. I think it's going to continue to.
the graph on top of a new one and see how they are different, etc. And then I did that on Twitter, and I can send you also. You can pull out from Twitter anything you find useful.
Well, the most interesting thing, the first one on Reddit that you posted and the second one, it slightly differs, but it's essentially the exact same. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is super fascinating.
You can superimpose them, and there are, like slightly off, but of course it's kind of understanding because also it depends on where you do the calculation, right?
And at what time,
because I imagine you do the calculation when you are close to one of these peaks, your data will be kind of skewed.
Gonna throw it off a bit. Yeah.
But
as we get more data, it's going to eventually come together.
And you can correct it for that too. You can say, okay, I'm going to give less weight to the outliers. So there are mathematical methods to do that. But, basically these are Guy Berger that I mentioned, we talk many times. I think he has also physics background, but he's a really clever guy. And he did a lot also confirmations, he did calculations, and he showed he used a more sophisticated method to show that it's stable over time, that actually basically since 2015, I think, basically the model has been the same without almost no change.
Yeah.
And of course, as we get more data, it's going to be more precise. But, if you change it, if these slope change, enormously from, year to year, then the model will be incorrect. But if it slightly changes and it, goes back and forth because we have more data, it's okay. It's part of doing modeling.
Exactly. Yeah. And that makes sense to me. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Giovanni. We'll definitely talk.
No problem. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your questions.
And this has been a great breakdown. I think a great introduction to people that aren't as deep into math. They'll be able to understand it a lot more. And we'll check in and see if it continues to do so. I'm convinced. I think it will.